So again, Dr. Slaton Live, Brain Talk. So Brain Talk, physical mentalism, because we have to have this conversation. See, I've been surrounded by mental health issues most of my childhood and adult life. And we're trying to help people understand that it's as simple as not being easy when you have contact with another person. It just irritates the receive path, and that emotion just blows up to an act of aggression. So when I talk about physical mentalism, what I'm not talking about is, is the behavior that some call bipolar, that a person has difficulty making and sustaining positive contact interaction. And I'm trying to give you a way to assess this crisis because you have to catch it early. You don't want to catch it when the kid's moving through puberty or young adulthood. You want to catch it as early as the kindergarten. See, my son, I talked about him and I talk about him throughout the book without saying his name. His kindergarten teacher, first, second grade teacher, the one that I remember the most was Mrs. Marks. And Mrs. Marks tried to sit us down and tell us there was something wrong. We weren't prepared to hear it, but she was trying to let us know that mentally there was something wrong with Chris. But I couldn't hear her because I took it too personal. I looked at it as a dig against me. Now, had I been educated at that time, then I would have responded differently as I have in other situations or as I have as I've aged through that crisis into understanding the family dynamics and the role of leadership, responsible leadership. That's what my son taught me. And so I want to read from Physical Mentalism. When you listen to the body, you mentally attempt to sense and feel the types of aches or hurt that affect how you make contact, interact, cooperate, and participate. This is why learning the brain can be helpful for certain types of children who are growing up hurt by major life events. When the brain is in the lead of the body, the goal is to learn how to live each day, to learn ways to move through contact. And I say that because the one thing that I worked on my son with the most was discipline. And discipline in terms of how he moved out of contact and displayed control, because he was larger than other kids. And the complaints were he's too animated. He needs to slow himself down. Constant complaints about him knocking kids over, and no realization to the fact that his body was growing faster than his brain and his equilibrium was naturally off. This is one of the things that contributed to his stress and tension as a child. And it could have been one of the triggers was the fact that environmentally people treated him differently based on what his physics described. But when I talk about physical mentalism, I'm saying that because I worked on discipline, right, that he was brain first, brain on. He had to be aware because I informed him about his physics and how other children and adults were responding to him and why he had to work on focusing when he's moving through and around people. But that was a story of him responding. And then later on, it's what really worked in our family dynamic when he had his psychosis or break from reality was that he still maintained brain lead. So he was disciplined. So he never was physical with anyone inside the house. He was never a danger to himself or others because I always talked to his brain and not his body. Discipline is informing the brain through a sense of feel for self, getting him to feel signs of care for himself, and then relate those signs of care to the body and why the body had to be under control, his control, so that people would be able to comprehend him, his true self, through focus. Because he was a good student, he was a good person, he was a good child. So we never got those kind of negative reports. All the reports were he's a very nice young man, but he's just too clumsy. He's just too animated. He's just can't have any fun. Okay. So I'm saying to you that physical mentalism is about learning the brain in the sense of self, the feel for self. So I talk about a sense of feel for self. So when you look at number 6, physical mentalism, understand what I'm saying. I'm saying, yes, the body is physical, but your sense of feel for self is mental because it's inner outer. And so you want the person to respond to the environment, but through their mental instincts, so that they're reading and interpreting the contact interaction as they're moving through it. And if they can't do that, then there's a lack of care or a lack of focus. Or could it be both? But that's what you're assessing, because we have to figure out if a person cannot maintain levels of focus supported by discipline and the information processing. I mean, when I asked, he could tell me what happened. Even when he was in his worst states, he was able to inform me. And that's what I said before. He didn't have a problem speaking the truth, talking back to my brain, clarifying my remarks. But it was never in a threatening manner. His tone may have been aggressive, but he was physically not indicating any use of force as a threat of aggression. And that's what we're talking about, because we're talking about people who go straight to physicality and don't know how to calm themselves down. And that's why I teach the sense, feel to focus process cycle. Because if you can't sense, that means you can't make the contact. So how do you live through it? Right? And that's the self that connects to how you live through it. So if you can't live through it, then how do you learn how to live with self? And so there is the issue. The anger is because the person may want, or the child or the person may want to control the body, but they're just not able to do it because they cannot focus the energy and then sustain it. And the strategy is that I've worked with that has helped many, many of my students is the sense to feel, to focus, a sense of feel for self in the brain. Now look what I just said. The sense is the breath of life. So you move from breathing to feeling to focusing. And when you focus, you're exhaling. And why are you exhaling? Because you're organizing. Sense and receive past functions. Receive, organize, express. Feelings. Feelings of the experience. What's in the experience? The event and self. And so we're talking about what should take place, and those are 3 words. So what's missing? Because you can measure those events: sense, feel, focus. What are you sensing? The environment, other people, self. What are you feeling? Energy, action, feelings, emotion, thought, reflection, right? And why? because your sense of feel is the process variable. And that's what you're looking at, because you want to know that he or she can feel you or feel the environment and recognize when things are safe and respond to those feelings of safety. But what we're talking about is processing. And so the sense to feel self is a process cycle. So that interaction, that interplay is coaction between the brain and the body and your sense of feel for self. Because you have an inner capacity to sense and feel, the inner you. So I'm saying sense to feel to focus, a sense of feel for self in the brain. Because we're learning how to use these words to structure how we make contact and how we plan to interact through the experience of pain, hurt, or sadness long enough for forward feed to kick in. And when forward feed kicks in, that's that new reflection, thought, emotion to deal with what is. But when you're helping, it changes everything. Because when you are participating, you've made a choice to care. And when you're moving through signs of care and information processing, then you know how to land your emotion, thought, and reflection so that you don't appear to be disabled. That's another way of saying it. Mentally upset is what I'm referring to. So I'm not talking about physical mentalism when I'm talking about mental health and mental illness. I'm talking about the sense of feel for self, which is the game changer. Because if you can feel your way through the contact and realize the pain that you're experiencing simultaneously, that's what physical mentalism is talking about. How do you get through it? And what's so important about your sense of feel for self that enables you to move through self struggles and then begin to realize what's happening. Now you have awareness. But those three things that I talk about inform the brain, discipline the body, focus the senses. Is your human system structuring so that brain, body, and sense activity is moving through interplay, sense and receive path functioning through feelings of care that traverse the brain's body and cause you to feel your performance as other people begin to observe your physicality, physical mentalism, because it's in the body and your state of mind is exhibiting that mental force that's behind you, within you, that you're exhibiting. I said mind, body, mind, because the brain body is in the lead, right? Now you are a complete unit of analysis in terms of understanding why or how children that are hurt learn to gain confidence in their ability to sense, feel, and focus capacity, to learn how to move through self. Because they're using the physics. They're using human physics. That means they're studying other people. If they can't understand themselves or their own state of mind or physicality, they study other people and their responses to them. Or they study the environment and how the environment, energy, action, and feelings is evolving around their participation. And they know what it was like when the environment was a trigger. For example, a kid's in a classroom and they're upset because there's just too many distractions. And so you teach the child how to move through the crisis of self with all the distractions, how to calm down. Now, one situation that I use frequently in the classroom, if I have a kid who's having these kind of encounters, I will set a mirror in their area where they can look at. So when they feel the distractions coming at them, they are able to see themselves and that image reflected back. You know, Michael Jackson, his song in the mirror. And so that's why I began to build that mode of thought. And I've been testing it on children. And so I asked them, when you go through this, focus on getting 5 seconds of physical discipline that you can observe. Now 10 seconds, now 15, and I'm assessing mental health. I'm assessing capacity. I'm assessing ability to self-support amongst all the distractions of the environment. And you would call it environmental learning, but it works in 3 ways: environmental learning with people and then self. So here we go, because when we talk about the physicality of self, I want it to be understood as you move through the book that you are more mental than you are emotional. But at birth, you are straight up an emotional human being because you're hurt. That first breath, because you're hurt. That first stretch, that first yawn, you know, your eyes want to open. All these things, all these transitions, because you're a feeling system. And people don't realize you feel everything. So you cry, because who wouldn't cry if everything's happening simultaneously with that breath of life experience? And so you breathe and you feel everything. And you exhale if you can, because you haven't learned that yet, how to exhale. So you're in a state of, well, I would say shock. I would say withdrawal. I would say because you're moving through the unknown and you don't realize what's going to happen. So how do you stop yourself from evaporating into this emotional state forever? Because the people around you are supposed to immediately give you signs of care, touch, sound, noise, comfort, to let you know it's safe. You're going to be okay. No matter how long it takes to calm you down so that you can feel the environment is working for you and you're becoming more attuned to the environment. And we're talking about mental health because, see, a lot of children, when you talk about drug-related disorders, they don't get this. They may get it temporarily from a nurse, practitioner, or someone else, but they don't necessarily get it with the kindness of a biological, attuned parent. And so that kid's start in life is complicated by the physics of self and not knowing the mental side of feeling better because of others and their contributions to your sense of feel for self. And I've been around a lot of parents, and I've observed parents who deliver that sense of feel to that child. That child could be bawling, but that parent stays steady and delivers. I know you're upset. People are laughing. But the parent is saying, I know you're upset, but you're going to get over it because that's not good for you, and I can't let you have that. Now, you may not understand me, but calm down. I'm not going anywhere, and talking to the brain. And just consistently, no matter who's in the environment, it's not play, this parent's working. This parent's putting it in, putting the brain work in, trying to rescue the child from that emotional chaos that's easy for them to stay in, right? Because one person ignores it and another parent says, no, you can't be crying all the time because that's a sign of pain, hurt, and sadness. What's wrong? We have to teach you how to accept care. Am I getting there? Accept care. Now look at what we're talking about when we're dealing with children with damaged sense and receive path functions. They have a problem accepting care. They have a problem accepting help. Not all of them, but we're talking about an assessment, a mental health assessment. We're talking about children that isolate from contact because it's not normal for them to be cared for. It's not normal for them to hear words that are kind to their sense of self environmentally because they're influenced by the external. So an external event caused the pain, hurt, and sadness versus it being inborn or organic. That's what you're trying to find out. That's the assessment process. Learn the brain's body. Home, school, neighbor, workplace, family, education, government, business systems. And those are your assessment structures so that you're grounded in what you're trying to understand. So as you move to help your kid or your loved one, you're grounded in understanding economics that surrounds working with a troubled person. The cost, if you don't get it right, if you don't get it right, and if you don't take the lead, the cost. But even with you in the lead, the cost, but they're not as high because you're managing the people, because you're delivering treatment yourself. And you can go into any laboratory, I'm talking about any clinical environment, and you'll see how care is being delivered. And then you look at how you're delivering that care and the difference between the way your child responds to you versus them, you'll see, you'll feel, you'll experience. And so this is the mental health assessment process for a community person that I had to learn with my son and my two daughters. I haven't even talked about them, but when I talk about them, it's because they didn't understand what was happening to their brother, that they began to act out themselves because they thought he was getting all the attention, when in fact, he deserved all the attention because we had to make sure we were assessing him every day for health and safety so that everybody in the house was safe. And we had to make those hardcore decisions. Parents, you have to make these hardcore decisions. And they are, your children may not understand, but you have to, because you have to get to the bottom of this and make sure that it doesn't permeate to another child who then mimics this child. And now you got a dual problem. One's real and one's made up, manifested for attention. See what we're talking about? So this is what we're talking about, the physical mentalism. But the transformation is when you have a high sense of feel for self that you can move through, right? So here we go. because that's what we're talking about, mental illness, mental health. And I want to take it down another notch. Look through a sense of feel for self. You learn through an outer sense of feel for your physical body and an inner feel for your brain. This is how you learn to reduce acts of physical force, misbehavior. Hence, you can learn to lead through your sense of feel for self as the body through acts to learn the brain, as physical, emotional, and mental process cycles of the body and sense events. And so it's the physical, mental, emotional, sensory systems that you're working through because you're observing, listening, learning, helping, leading. But you don't just do it all at the same time. You observe, to listen, to learn. I'm pausing because you pause. You don't just lead, you don't just help, you pause. I'll do it again. Observe, listen, learn, pause. Because you can't help if the help's not going to be accepted. See? And you don't just help. You help because the person is giving you the flag. Yes, inform me. I need the information. So now you help. And you don't just lead because you're leading. You say, you're not going to put it in their face, but now because they're accepting your help, now you're taking the lead. But what are you leading through? Self-awareness. Because what did you do first? You inform self. You discipline self. You focus self in those first 3 steps. So in the next step, you are delivering the influence of what that information and that experience of contact interaction taught you about this person's sense of feel for self. Care. We work out of care. Safety is about care. Okay? And so teaching everybody this is not the same because you got to be very, very careful when you're teaching people in an environment that's being occupied by levels of mental illness because people miss words, misuse words, fight for attention, especially siblings. That's what I'm really talking about, his sisters, okay? And so we had to protect everybody, right? And I don't think any of us have recovered from that experience of Christian Rashid Slaton. And the amount of care we deliver. And no one understands why we deliver that care. But if you're in this practice, I'm telling you, you're a parent and you have a sick child, you deliver it and you don't realize because you don't, you delivering the same thing to everybody else. Except for this one, it's more focused. Because this one, you must do this. You must do that. You must work that way. With the others, you deliver it normally. There's no emphasis. It's just a gradual, continuous action learning process cycle. Whereas for this one, it is recording, observing, learning, listening, reorganizing, pretending. I call that acting through the crises, right? To perform. And what they're looking at is your performance, and they're scoring it like, that's easy. And there's no way it's easy because you are delivering the work through a practice every single day. What they don't realize is that the house is safe, that everybody is really on the same page. Okay? But you have different, it's like being in a classroom. A teacher once told me, and the first time I heard this, she told me, I got over 40 brains in this class. that I got to deal with individually. From that point on, I was there to help because I understood exactly what she was saying. But every teacher don't feel that way, but I'm talking about for her to admit it to me, knowing that I'm an activist in her classroom, working for a kid and assessing her environment to see what the triggers are that's affecting his or her ability to be successful in receiving instruction. And she told me up front. And as I scanned the classroom, she was absolutely right. Out of 40 kids, 35 of them could have been drug babies. That's how animated her class was. And she had to call the principal. The principal came in and talked to me. I gave him recommendations, but there's no way one teacher can deal with children that suffer from substance abuse related disorders that impact their sense and receive path functions because they can't sit still long enough to explore the experience of the teacher. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Physical mentalism. Let me get it right. Physical mentalism, right? The contact you're moving through is through signs of care. So the teacher's giving signs of care, but it don't matter because how can she give it to all 40 at the same time? That's what I'm talking about. Okay? And when you're trying to move a family out of crises, you individualize the treatment. You don't make everybody have the same formula. So you have to deal with each person differently. And so that's what they're arguing about. Well, you're treating me different. You're darn right I'm treating you different. You're older. You're supposed to be smarter. I'm talking. And I'm making it relative to physical mentalism because they're observing the contact interactions going on between me, the parent, and my son, Rashid, who's suffering from schizophrenia. And they're taking it to the next level and assuming, oh, there's nothing wrong with him. That's the crises. No, because talk to parents. That's the crises because no one seems to understand what mental health and mental illness is. Okay? They don't understand what a break from reality is, or how difficult it is for a child suffering from episodes with schizophrenia, hearing voices, and so on and so on, has to work to be safe and to stay situated in an environment to experience and be experienced by others. The fear that that child goes through. I mean, this is what we're talking about. What I'm saying to you, learning the brain's body is an assessment process that allows you to get on the front of organizing brain, body, and sense events so that you begin to realize, whoa, that's not working. What's not working? Well, he's not paying attention. What he's not paying attention to? Well, he's not disciplined. What does that mean? That means that he has lost his sense of feel for self in the brain. And the brain's no longer in the lead. The brain is losing its edge because he is not showing signs of care. Okay, I put the rest in for what? The brain. And working through the brain, through signs of care, to develop a sense of feel for the feelings of self in reference to, if they can't reflect, in reference to what I'm displaying physically, that they can read and interpret. So, for example, my son may be acting all out and animated and so forth and so on, but I'm standing there talking to him, and he's allowing himself to calm down through just verbiage, just me talking to his brain. So he's physically and mentally there. And even if the voices are taking him over, he is periodically sticking out and saying, okay, Dad, can he sustain it? Assessment, can he sustain it? For how long can he sustain it? Do you need to monitor? How long do you have to monitor to make sure he's able to sustain it? Those are the things you're talking about. But you see, the thing is that that's what you're doing when you're establishing levels of frequency and all the, you're writing this stuff down because you want to know, am I safe? Are we safe? Can I trust other people being in the environment? Can I let him go outside? Can I let him move through the neighborhood unsupervised? Because that's responsible leadership. That's what I'm trying to let you know. This is the complexity. So he got all the attention and he lived longer than his doctors said he would, based upon his overall health, as they expressed it to us in our meetings between the doctor, psychiatrist, and other support services. So here we go. I do not just talk about the brain's body. I write from my self-study of the brain and the body. I call this physical mentalism, to learn through self-research the events of the brain that include how the body feels. I talk through a sense of feel for self to observe, listen, learn, help, and lead the actions of my body from the inside out. I just now said it again, and we talk about it because that's an effective strategy for self-leadership. But when you transition to delivering it instructionally to another person, you're teaching them, wait, observe, gotta observe, wait, you gotta listen, wait, you gotta learn. Now they can check each one. Can you observe? Can you listen? Can you learn? Can you help? Can you lead? Can you be in the lead of self through the brain, to discipline the body, to focus the senses, to inform self through levels of awareness, becoming more and more aware each time you practice progressive investing, living each day to become more informed. I just said it again. So I'm talking about mental health, but I'm talking about problem solving, human problem solving. See? So when I go back to my son that I'm using, wow, but you understand. Because what I'm saying to you is that it was ingrained as he worked with me that you live each day to become more informed. So it didn't matter. He applied it. He applied it to his life. It made it easier for him to work with me because he knew he had to learn me. And as he was learning me, he felt more and more comfortable because I was changing me to meet his needs. I was not the dad he knew before he had his major life event. I was the dad he was coming to know through signs of care, to recognize dad works with me. Dad is changing because of me. Dad is responding to what he thinks I need. That's what it takes. Get you out of the way. Self-research. Human system research. That's what I'm talking about. But for him, it's self-research. For me, it's I got to get me out of the way first. And as I get me out of the way, now I can hear my son. I can now learn him because my assumptions have been placed on the shelf. See? And now what's my safety zone? Because I'm working through signs of care. He keeps showing me signs of care. I keep on delivering. When he stops showing me signs of care, I pause. Set strategy, and I back up. See? And I recover through brain talk because I'm talking to the brain. And I'm listening to the words he's throwing back at me. And they can be abusive words, but you can separate the voices from the true, real aggression that's taking place. Because what are you studying? Physical mentalism. There's no tightness in the hand. There's no pinching in the eyes. There's no twisting of the face. None of this. If he does do it, it's temporary. It's because we hit a point and then he lets it go. Because what are we working at? We're working at moving through the experience of self and the brain and studying the other person's physics for help. Because as long as I don't show any signs of negative energy, he cool. Because he knows dad has all that look. You know how fathers are. We got that look. I'm looking at him like, you know? And I'm saying, and that means to him, look, man, I'm checking you. We got agreement, we got a contract. I'm doing my part. We just said, because it's a contract. I do what I need to do. He do what he need to do. We identify the goals and objectives. He may fall off, but my job is to remind him what the contract says. And if he can't keep the contract, well, we study in mental health. And if he can keep the contract, to what extent? So when he's not doing this, he's not doing that, I remind him, does he come back? How long does it take him to come back? How long does it take him to take out the trash? How long does it take him to go someplace, get ready to go to his doctor's appointment? How long does it take him? When he says he doesn't want to do something, does he just don't do it no matter what you say? How long does it take him to come around? You see? When it comes to bathing, how long does it take him to go in the bathroom and act like he's bathing? Okay? I said act like he's bathing. Anybody knows mental illness knows that's one of the hardest parts is hygiene. Okay. This has been Dr. Slaton Live. I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, we're talking about brain talk. And what is brain talk? I hope you've enjoyed it because I am talking about this can be an inner and outer struggle since you can see and feel the way you make contact with other people and interact. Hence, studying how you interact with other people from the inside to the outside may help to navigate feelings of emotion and unlock brain-based thought. That's what I've been talking about. That's page 140. So I've been talking to you straight up about what I'm reading here in Brain Talk, but trying to give you real examples of the research that's gone into developing the product. And then the noise and sounds, signs, and symbols that I'm talking through to just let you know, get your copy today. Dr. Slaton Live. Thank you.